Shadow banking, the hidden system, controlling global money. Every day, trillions of dollars move across the world, flowing between banks, governments, and corporations. But behind these visible transactions lies something much larger, a hidden network of financial power that operates beyond regulation, beyond accountability, and beyond the reach of most governments. It doesn't print money, yet it creates it. It doesn't run banks, yet every bank depends on it. And it doesn't appear on any balance sheet, yet it controls how money moves across the entire planet. Economists call it the shadow banking system, an invisible empire that quietly determines the rhythm of global finance. From Wall Street to London, from Tokyo to Singapore, this network has grown so vast that it now holds more wealth than every government and traditional bank combined. The system was never designed to be seen, and perhaps that's exactly why it works. Because in the world of modern finance, what happens in the shadows doesn't stay hidden forever. It decides who prospers and who collapses, the anatomy of an invisible system. The shadow banking system isn't illegal, it's simply unseen. Unlike traditional banks, these institutions don't take deposits or issue loans that ordinary people can access. Instead, they create credit through a maze of financial instruments, repo loans, derivatives, securitized assets, deals so complex that even regulators struggle to map them. Think of it as a second financial universe, one that mirrors the visible economy but runs on entirely different rules. In this world, capital doesn't rest. It flows 24 hours a day across a network of hedge funds, private equity firms, and asset managers, each one borrowing, lending, and leveraging in fractions of a second, transforming short-term loans into long-term profits. But here's the key difference. Every transaction in this network is backed not by savings, but by trust, the assumption that each borrower will repay the next. That trust allows trillions to move invisibly. It fuels stock markets, government bonds, and corporate debt, all without the safety nets of the traditional banking world. By 2025, the shadow system is estimated to handle more than $250 trillion in assets, more than twice the size of the global economy itself. Yet, no one can say exactly where this money is or who truly controls it. It's a system too large to monitor and too interconnected to fail, a web so vast that when one strand trembles, the entire world feels the vibration. The rise of the unseen empire, 2008 and beyond. The rise of shadow banking wasn't an accident. It was born out of a global collapse. In 2008, when traditional banks began to crumble under the weight of bad mortgages and toxic assets, the world's financial system faced its most dangerous moment in modern history. Governments rushed in with emergency loans, while central banks printed trillions to stop the bleeding. But when the dust settled, the financial elite learned a critical lesson. Risk hadn't disappeared. It had simply become visible. So they moved it. Regulators forced traditional banks to play safer, to hold more reserves, limit leverage, and report every transaction. But those same regulations created a new opportunity, a space outside the spotlight, where the same risky behaviors could continue unchecked. That space became the shadow system. Here, financiers could borrow without limits, trade without scrutiny, and engineer profits with layers of hidden leverage. And soon, the new giants emerged. Asset managers like BlackRock, Vanguard, and Citadel, firms that didn't look like banks, didn't act like banks, yet held more power than any of them. By 2015, the system had doubled in size. By 2020, it had overtaken traditional banking entirely. What began as a safety mechanism after 2008 evolved into an invisible empire, one that created money faster than central banks, traded debt faster than regulators could react, and influenced markets faster than governments could understand. And while the public focused on Wall Street, the real power had already moved underground, the power behind markets and governments. In the world of modern finance, power is rarely visible. Politicians may write the laws and central banks may print the money, but it's the shadow institutions that decide where that money goes, how it multiplies, and when it disappears. Every major market, from housing and stocks to energy and bonds, now relies on the invisible credit pipelines of the shadow banking network. These flows decide which economies grow and which collapse. When a government borrows to build infrastructure or fund its debt, chances are the money doesn't come from taxpayers. It comes from these entities, funds, asset managers, and private lenders hidden in the global financial underworld. They buy sovereign bonds, repackage them into new securities, and sell them back to investors, creating layers of debt that look solid on paper but are built on faith alone. Firms like BlackRock, Vanguard, and Citadel now control or manage assets worth tens of trillions of dollars. In practice, they've become the invisible regulators of capitalism itself. Central banks consult them, governments rely on their data, and corporations depend on their liquidity to survive. The paradox is striking. The institutions with the most power to move markets are the ones least accountable to the public. The result is an architecture of influence that transcends borders. It's not national, it's not democratic. It's financial gravity, silent, constant, and inescapable. The shadow banking system doesn't need to overthrow governments. It underwrites them. Cracks in the shadows. Every empire built on credit eventually meets its limits. The shadow banking empire is no exception. Its strength, speed, complexity, and secrecy is also its greatest weakness. The system functions only as long as confidence holds. But confidence, unlike money, can't be printed. In September 2019, a small corner of this network began to tremble. The U.S. repo market, the short-term engine that keeps trillions in liquidity moving, suddenly froze. Overnight, interest rates exploded from 2% to over 10%, threatening to paralyze global credit within hours. The panic lasted less than 2 days. The Federal Reserve quietly injected hundreds of billions of dollars, restoring calm before most people ever noticed. But that moment exposed an uncomfortable truth. The world's financial system was seconds away from seizing. Then came 2020. As markets collapsed under the pandemic's shock, the shadow network buckled again. Within weeks, central banks around the world unleashed trillions in emergency liquidity. Each intervention bought stability, but also dependency. Every bailout reinforced the illusion that risk no longer existed, that the system could never fail because someone would always step in. But beneath the surface, the web only grew tighter, more leveraged, and more fragile. Today, a single misstep, a sudden default, a credit freeze, or even a loss of faith in short-term lending could send shockwaves through every market on Earth. The irony is haunting. The network built to make the world's economy more efficient has become the very mechanism that could bring it down when the shadows fall. Every generation believes its financial systems are unshakable. Rome believed gold was eternal. The British Empire believed trade could never fail. And today, we believe in credit. Invisible promises stacked on top of more promises. The shadow banking empire is the ultimate expression of that belief. It represents the brilliance of human innovation, our ability to turn risk into opportunity, to build wealth from imagination. But it also exposes our blind faith in systems we no longer understand. Economists call it the dark matter of finance, unseen, but shaping everything that moves. When it works, the system feels limitless, but when it stops, even for a heartbeat, everything we call the global economy begins to vanish. The next global crisis may not begin with a stock market crash or a housing bubble. It may begin with a quiet liquidity freeze deep inside this network, a digital whisper that becomes a financial scream before anyone even knows it's happening. The invisible empire that shaped the modern world could become the same force that unravels it. In the end, money isn't power. Control isn't power. The real power lies in what's hidden and what we choose not to see.